Hey, and welcome back to Heartbreak Hotel, where you check in to check out. Recognition of a broken heart is the easiest and fastest way to a healthy heart. We do not admit that we have heartbreak to stay there, but we admit that we have heartbreak because God is the friend of the brokenhearted. Okay, guys, we are back. We are at the end of the nitty gritty of in Married to the Backslider, available on Amazon. Please like, share, comment. Um, Subscribe, not just because we want numbers up, guys, but I truly believe that this book is a help to all that read it. We are on episode 17, I believe, or 16. 16. Um, we're almost done. All right, let's get into it. Chapter It Was All a Dream. One night while I was in bed, Joe was watching TV. When he came to bed, he was covered in sweat. He said he didn't feel good. He couldn't stop shaking. I cut on the light and pulled back the covers to see the spasms in his legs. We called the ambulance and he was taken to the hospital. We were in for the ride of our lives. The nurses and doctors had looked at his history and saw that he had a history of drug use. They treated him like an addict, as if he was going through withdrawals when you could clearly see the pain he was having. He hadn't been taking his oxycodone 30 milligrams because he was tired of being high. He in turn was taking another pain medicine that was prescribed to him that was not a narcotic. I didn't know, but he had taken more than he should, not to get high, but to stop the pain, and so that he wouldn't have to take the oxy. They also looked at the fact that he had been in behavioral health and treating him accordingly. They refused to give him any pain medicine. Whew. For 3 days, he was in pain. He didn't eat. He didn't sleep. He only moaned and yelled. I ate for him. I let the activist in me kick in. First, I contacted the choir and asked them to pray. Then I went into mother bear mode. I spent nights and demanded to see doctors because they always said to me that the doctors were not available when I got off work. When that did not work, I began to call around to speak to other persons in charge. The nurses had been so rude. They had no bedside manners. The breaking point was when my husband called me at 4 in the morning after being in pain. A nurse came in and hastily moved his pillows and pulled the covers, causing his IV to come out of his arm. She then shoved it back in. He told her it hurt. She said to him he was just hurting because he was a junkie. That was a no. I called the hospital immediately. Hello, I would like to speak with Robin. I said. She had already stated her name, so I knew it was her. Robin, this is Miss Silver, and I have a problem. My husband has been in pain for 4 days now. He finally got comfortable and you came in his room and harassed him. I'm not sure why you felt the need to not use your bedside manners, but today when I come to that floor, I suggest you leave. If I have to see you today, it's going to be smoke in the city. And please know that I already have alerted your supervisor. You are not to be in my husband's room or on his floor for that matter. Do I make myself clear? Yes, ma'am. I'll be sure to let Robin know, Robin said as if she was not herself. I got dressed and went to the hospital right then. I had made so many phone calls that day to the hospital that when I arrived, the director of the hall and the charge nurse were in the unit waiting for me. Joe said, baby, don't fuss. They're making it right. The director came in. Hello, Miss Silver. We understand that you called the CEO and requested to have your husband moved to a different hospital. Yes, ma'am, I did. You all have hundreds of patients, but I only have one husband, and I'm going to see to it that he's taken care of efficiently with care, compassion, and respect. Yes, ma'am, I understand. Let me be the first to apologize to you and your husband for all of your trouble. Please let me know exactly what issues you are having. I made my request known, and then I told her to ask my husband who was now all of a sudden receiving pain medicine. Oh, honey, don't worry. Everything is okay. They're taking care of me now. They weren't before, said the doctor. Honey, I don't want to get anybody in trouble, he said. Well, it's okay, Mr. Silver. You are our first priority. We thank you for being in such good spirits while you were experiencing so much pain. She was right. My husband had been a saint to every nurse, even the rude ones. He would say, baby, I'm okay. It's not their fault. It really made me take a look at myself. My attitude had gotten better, but my husband was so pleasant, even though he felt like he was knocking on death's door. Even with the pain medicine they were giving him, he was still hurting like never before. He had a fever of 103 that they had to use cooling blanket to get his temperature down. The first night we were in the ER, I fed him ice chips and sang him songs to lift his spirits. We had to stay focused on God. At least I did, so that I could be strong for him. It turned out the new medicine he was prescribed was causing a side effect due to taking more than recommended dosage at a time. It caused an infection in his blood and was attacking his prosthetic hip and causing the spasms that we could see jump from his hip to his thigh. They began to run antibiotics. Just when we thought things were getting better, things got complicated. On Friday, I went to pick up two of our neighborhood kids. I couldn't get to their house or their block for that matter because there were about 12 police cars and the street was blocked off completely. I called them and they came to the car. Queen and her friend, Duchess, was in the 8th grade. What in the world is going on in the hood today? We don't know. We think Charlie killed Marie and maybe the kids too, Queen said. Oh no, I said as I pulled away. While at the grocery store, I got several phone calls confirming that it was partly true. Charlie, Marie's husband, had shot and killed her and then turned the gun on himself. The kids had gotten away. I was in shock and disbelief. I immediately called the hospital. I explained the situation to Nurse Wendy and asked that Joe not be able to receive calls, that I wanted to tell him in person and that I was on my way to the hospital. 2 minutes later, Joe called and asked why were the nurses asking him if he wanted to be a triple X patient as he just witnessed a murder. That's what I mean about not having common sense. Oh my goodness, I screamed inside. Honey, I have no idea, I said. He said, okay, and we hung up. I called back, and I have to admit, I laid Wendy out. Joe beeped in and said, baby, did you know that Charlie killed Marie? I could hear the hurt in his voice. Dang was all I could think as I rushed to the hospital. Charlie and Joe had lived in that neighborhood together all their lives. They were really close, and I knew that Joe was going to take it hard. When I got to the hospital, it was 10 p.m. The nurses didn't want to let me see my husband. Wendy, where is Wendy? I yelled. The nurses were telling me that visiting hours were over. Well, you can blame all this on Wendy because I asked her not to let people call my husband and tell him that his best friend just killed himself. But since you decided not only to tell him there was a murder, but allow him to receive calls, someone already told him. And I would just like to see the person who is going to keep me from getting in this room to console my husband. Tell me who wants to try. I stood in my best fighting stance. They all moved out of my way. I walked in the room to see my husband's face distraught. I could tell he wanted to cry. I went to him and held him. Baby, is it true? He said over and over. Yes, honey, it's true, I said as we rocked back and forth. But why? He said. I should have been there, he said over and over. I could have talked to him. I could have talked him out of it. I can't believe he killed Marie. Do you think he gave her a chance to ask God to forgive her sins? He went on and on. I just held him tight. My husband was admitted to an assisted living facility and ended up staying there for 2 whole months. I went to see him every day when I got off from work. It was hard living alone. I missed sleeping with my husband. I could stay every day until they made the announcement that it was time to leave. Joe was in an assisted living center from May to July. In that time, his mother became ill. One day, while Joe and I were visiting, we watched her have what looked like a seizure. It was so scary. It only lasted a couple of seconds, and then she came back. She was fine. Mama had been a cursor. So she forbid us to call the ambulance. But shortly afterwards, she did it again. So we called the EMS, and they came to take her to the hospital. She had had 2 mini strokes. When we talked to her, she said that she had had that feeling before when she was home alone, but she didn't think anything of it. She was admitted to the hospital, and things went downhill from there. When she was in the hospital, we learned there were a long list of things wrong with her that she hadn't told us about. Also, all she could say was that she didn't know it had gotten that bad. Basically, all of her major organs were failing, and she had to go on dialysis. She wouldn't eat the food in the hospital. I went to see her every day after work before I went to see Joe at the assisted living, but she passed in September. After that, things just wouldn't get better for Joseph. Over the next 2 years, he was either on bed rest in the hospital or in assisted living. You wouldn't know it though, to look at his smile and to hear his voice. He remained in good spirits. Not only did he keep the faith, but he spread the faith. Again, our church showed up and showed out. When they got the news that Joe was on bed rest, they brought the church to him. Every week, the men would visit him, whether it was at home, the nursing home, or the hospital. They surrounded him with love, encouragement, and prayer. He would tell me that he had never had a brotherhood so good to him. When they finally decided to take the hip out and replace it, we were elated. We were given a new hope. Over the course of 2 years, he had become a minister in his own right. He always said, baby, maybe somebody with a headache needs to see a guy with a walker. Praise the Lord. He had become an advocate for elderly in the facilities who were mistreated and did not have any family. He was their prayer partner, their confidant, and their shoulder to cry on. He was the light over every place he went to. He made them laugh and made them feel special. They loved seeing a young couple in the facility to brighten their lives. I was so proud of Joseph. He was loving and giving. He never complained. He said it was his calling to suffer for Christ so that the people there who may have never known the love of Christ could experience it. Wow. Imagine being so sick that you're on your deathbed and still thinking of others first. Like, instead of saying, why me? Why is this happening to me? Just saying, hey, let me make the best of every situation and be content in any situation. Whew. After being gone for 6 months, he was home for 1 month when the doctors admitted him to the hospital. That was the happiest month ever. We were like two newlyweds all over again. Things were looking up. They were finally going to schedule the surgery. It would be a long process, but we were certain it would be the final step. They were going to take the hip out, treat it completely, then put another hip in. Pause. Do you know if there's a surgeon that does work, it takes forever for another surgeon to come in because doctors don't want to touch each other's work? So my husband literally suffered because nobody wanted to take him on as a patient. That's what took so long. Okay. The process would take about 4 months and healing another month, but we were prepared. We were in awe of how so many people had come to Christ and even visited our church because of his witness. We couldn't believe how far we had came. We made videos and took pictures to document the struggles he was experiencing so that we could look back on them one day. This is our testimony, baby, he would say to me. One day while I was at work, he called to tell me that they had moved him to Chapel Hill. I was shocked and wondered why they had not just moved him somewhere closer. He joked that he was probably banned because he had made so much fuss in all the other places. So I left work early to go make sure that he got checked in safely. When I got there, he was settled in nicely. It was a really nice place. Oddly enough, the small town brought back memories. Joseph's birth mother had actually relocated to that town and raised her family there. Subsequently, all of his siblings, nieces, and nephews lived there. He had built a relationship with them long ago, so it was good to know that they were close by. They checked on him every day. I went every other day and stayed on the weekends. He was there for a month. On Monday, my husband surprised me by coming home to see me. He had gotten so good at doing the sweetest things. We had promised each other that we lived for the day and not for the weekend. He gave me money and told me to go get my hair done and to come see him on Wednesday. We were going to have a date. On Wednesday, we spoke that morning. He said he didn't feel well, but it wasn't anything that I should leave work about. It was hard to decipher because he had been sick for so long, but I knew he would have called if he wanted me to come there. He was worried because I had already missed so much work and I had a new boss. We kissed through the phone and I said I would see him that afternoon. But I got a call at 10 a.m. saying that he had been rushed to the hospital. I left work immediately thinking that he may have had a panic attack because that had happened before. But when I got to the hospital, they took me into a room to tell me that my husband was gone. I was hysterical. I didn't understand. He was just fine on Monday and it was Wednesday. The surgery was scheduled for Friday. And everything was supposed to be okay. Why didn't you do something? I screamed. Ma'am, your husband had a do not resuscitate order. I fell to the ground in shock. We had been to the hospital so many times, so many nursing homes, and every time we enrolled, I was there with him. Whenever admissions would ask if he wanted to be revived, he would say no. I would say, yes, he does. He would laugh and say, baby, don't bring me back from glory when it's my time. Up until this time, I was always with him when he got admitted. And now he had never been, and up until now, he had never had to be revived. I was devastated. The one time I wasn't there, he said, do not resuscitate. He left me. What about all our plans and our dreams? What about how far we come? It wasn't supposed to be like this. Joseph Vincent Silver never got to speak at the New Year's service because he passed away in August. What do you do when, like, you feel you've done all that you can? What do you do?